and also 4 hours to 5 hours. Even if you spend 5 hours on this, you're pretty much done in less than a day on your job. So you could always show at the end of the day, and if it's in the right direction, you could then continue the next day and really touch it up and finish it. But if it's in the wrong direction, then you only wasted half a day on it. So it's not that bad at all. So this kind of approach is much safer in a studio environment. So again, depending on where you work, if you're sitting next to your art director, this kind of stuff is much easier to deal with because then you could just, or you are the art director, you know what I'm saying, you can self-critique. But if you're working freelance, then quick is very important. So you can show your clients what you're up to. So here, the monster, the one closest to camera, is really getting defined very quickly. You see, so it go from being a giant blob of gray to a monster within an hour or so, while the rest of the painting is still very loose. So, but the feeling is getting there. You know, it's got the right, it's kind of, I guess, attitude is there. And this week I'll probably continue along this line even for the following week, where I just want to do a series of paintings that are somewhat familiar to the audience, you know, like you somehow know this kind of scene. So you guys can see how these kind of things were created in a painting environment. So I already have another one planned. I'll probably do sometime this week, so you guys will see that as well. We'll take it to a more daytime shot. I've been doing kind of these gloomy, overcast scenarios, which are really fun to paint. But I'm gonna do one that's actually daytime, you know, blue sky, white clouds, and stuff like that. I already started on that one already. So the cool thing about teaching these days is that sometimes we have off, you know, the term ends, so we pretty much have no students here except for one class. So it opens up about 4 days of my week right now to just do this kind of personal stuff. It's quite fun. That's why this painting is much longer than the general design cinemas you guys been seeing in the past, because I actually have a bunch of time right now to do this. So, and it's fun. It gives me time to catch up and also prepare a bunch of paintings. So when the students return in about 2.5 weeks, they will see a bunch of new stuff, and we could go over how they were done as well. So here I'm defining the soldier, again indicating him versus drawing him out. So you can see his arm, a little bit of his shoulder pad, and he's going to be holding a medieval weapon. It was funny in the beginning when I started this, I actually drew him with a gun because the tendency was to go sci-fi right away because I've been doing it all week. But I have to remind myself, oh no, this one has to be pure fantasy, you know, because some games out there they mix the two together, you know, where you have swords and stuff, but they also have guns, which is fun in an entertainment sense, but it doesn't really make sense in the real world. So, but it's always fun to paint that kind of stuff, you know, guys with bunch of swords and knives, and then another guy has a huge gun. You know, they're typical Warhammer type of things. You know, very fun subject matter. But in this case, I want to keep it just purely, you know, old school type of weapons. But this is not Earth, obviously. This is a fantasy world. So balancing him out, making him pop in front of the monster, so we know that he's closer to camera than the guy, you know, all the guys behind him, to create that parallax and then create that depth of field and that layering effect. So you can see that there's more 3D feel to it. The best way to look at this painting is at this stage, this kind of unfinished stage right now, is to blur your eyes, right? Just train yourself to blur your vision slightly, like a 10-20% blur, and you'll start feeling the shapes out. And anything that's not reading when you blur your eye, you should probably work on those first. So in this case, if you blur your eye, you'll see that the big monster reads quite well. He feels round, and it feels like there's light coming from below. And you could probably start seeing the soldier close to camera as well, and also that knife that he's holding, or the spear, is also popping in front of the camera. So that's good, and I'm doing that right now actually as I record the voice and blur my eye to look at this painting. So what I'm doing, another way to do it is to walk away from the screen. At home, I'm painting this on a 30-inch screen, so it's quite big. So it's very hard to even blur your eye, because when you blur your eye, it's still clear because it's so big. What I do is actually just walk away a few feet from the screen, just kind of blur your eye from that point on, so that way you're shrinking the image down and it's blurry to check your values and check your composition. Right, a bunch of stuff will show up when you do that. Another way to do is to zoom out, but in this case I don't want to do it too much, because if I zoom out on YouTube videos, you're going to see a tiny little painting that makes no sense. Right. I've rearranged my working interface to be very clean. All the layers and stuff are all those things are actually on, but you just can't see them. They're all below this painting. So I squashed them all down to be sitting below. So when I'm recording, you guys hopefully won't see too many menus get in the way. And it does make for a very efficient workspace. However, this is not the way I usually work. I'm always in the third mode of Photoshop, which is, you know, if you press F twice, you'll be in that mode. But when I do that, the menus then will pop up, which is quite ugly in recording. So I have to kind of get used to painting this way. It's a little awkward because when my hand gets to the corner of the screen, it's physically on the corner of the Wacom tablet. Whereas in the third mode, my hand is always in the middle of the Wacom tablet. I just pan the painting to be in the middle. You know what I'm saying? You could try it as well. Just go in the third mode, just hold the spacebar down. You can pan the image to match your hand position. Whereas right now, my hand position is actually going to the painting. So for a certain angle, especially the corners, the upper and the lower corners are very awkward to paint because your hand you have to actually move your wrist to get to those corners. Versus in general, I don't use my wrist to draw at all. It's all done through the elbow. So a little bit awkward, but nothing super major. Especially for something that's fantasy like this, is not that big of a concern when talking about industrial design stuff. Like if we're drawing a very tight a vehicle, then that'll be a thing, but I probably can't even do not in the Wacom. It's too awkward, so I have to go in the third mode to draw. So everyone has their own way of doing things. So for me, it's all about going through the elbow. So if my elbow can't swing naturally, it's very hard to get a nice line out of it, right? That kind of accelerated line is done through the elbow, not the wrist. So here the painting is probably already being rezzed up. We're probably right now looking at about 5,000, about almost 6,000 pixels wide, and that's how we get into the details. And also without this way, we don't have to remake brushes. We can keep the same brush to just get nice and refined. Define the creatures, making sure the light is on them. So again, blur your eyes and check it. So the second creature now should also be in light, but he's much further away. That also play with the perspective to create that sense of depth in between the creatures. And now we're just slowly working our way from the monsters into the crowd and into the castle. So let me see if there's anything technical about this painting. Not much different from last week's. Same thing, same approach, just different subject matter. A little bit more epic in the sense of the composition. But technical wise, high resolution, painted on the pretty high-end machine here, lots of RAM. Yeah, paintings like this, if you want to go high res, you're gonna need the RAM. You know, your machine's gonna be chugging like crazy if you don't have it. Right now, I'm painting a bunch of highlights. So as things go further from you, they're gonna pick up these little highlights and reflections. So just kind of indicate those, especially these kind of soldiers that are wearing armor. And excuse me while I take a quick drink. Painting like this are fun. You know, I'm doing these for myself, and when you do stuff for yourself, you can just do whatever you want. Who cares? You know, as long as you're having fun doing it and you're learning or whatever enjoyment getting out of it. So when I'm doing this, I just want to do a bunch of cool stuff. I've seen these kind of epic paintings all the time in the film. Hey man, let's try one. You know, let's just try to do one. Can we capture the same feeling? And that's all. That's my entire approach for this painting. And so will be the next one I'm doing for you guys next week. Same thing, just a different scene that I want to try out and just try it. You know, no one could tell you that, hey, that's not the way, or move this or change that. It's your own stuff. So it's a great way to learn. Right. But of course, the best way to learn is always under pressure, under client stress, because you have to deal with changes that someone else is telling you how to do it. And then you have to still have to make it look cool. And that's a real good way to learn. Because you learn to deal with pressure and you learn to deal with adjustments that sometimes seem impossible to make, but you still got to make it work, right? They're hiring you as a professional. So, but this kind of stuff is way more fun. When I'm doing this, is the stress level is almost zero. It's all fun. Whereas you're doing stuff for a client, there is a high sense of stress involved because you can't screw it up, first of all, and then you have to make sure that whatever you're doing should probably match whatever project you're on. Right? You can't just have 100% freedom to do whatever you want. Whereas you can in this one, if you want to just burn the castle out or destroy and change it into a big giant mushroom, sure, or whatever. You know, it's your own stuff. Who cares, you know? Now I'm adding fire, getting some sense of a battle that's going on. So in there is probably thousands of troops fighting it out. They're invading this castle. Indicating a little bit of walls of this place. So it's those kind of typical siege kind of things. Really fun subject matter. And also this week I've been playing a lot of fantasy games as well, checking out some of the newer stuff, as well as playing this game that seems to go on forever called Oblivion. I don't know if you guys should probably know it. It's one of those RPGs that just lasts forever, so I'm trying to finish it. But it's good, you know, it gets you into the mood for fantasy, I guess. Because that's as fantasy as you go, you know, the hardcore knight in armor, horses and goblins and all that kind of thing. The Tolkien-ish world.